Hello everybody. Today I feel like I need to talk about something quite important. And I'll probably do a number of these videos. This is just the first of many, covering a wide spectrum of issues pertaining to American politics and global politics as a whole. So it's what's actually going on in the world, and what most of us, the majority, aren't really aware of. So I'm going to take this time, and it's been a while since I've done some of these videos, because I've been under quite a lot of mental and physically violent and mental attacks that seemingly would come from nowhere, right? So you'd think it was a medical issue, right? But I know it's probably way more than that. I have to address so much. So please give me a minute to collect my thoughts on this issue, because this issue is very, very close and personal to my heart. It's hard to say where to begin exactly. And this is very painful. And I'm trying to maintain a non-aggressive way of wording it, because I don't want you to get the wrong impression of me, because I know that's exactly what the people pushing for these initiatives would want, right? They'd want me to get angry and upset and irate, and which wouldn't tear their argument down, it would only tear mine apart. So I'm trying to take my time with this and be as understanding as patient as I can. And this is serious. This affects everyone. Okay? It affects every single one of us. Whether you have children or you don't have children. Whether you're a child or you're not a child. Whether you're a pedophile or you're not. I was abused very violently at an extremely young age. And no, this was not just a matter of this man's orientation or status. Okay? He got a thrill out of being exceedingly violent. And now it seems not just the left, but more so the left recently, but not just the left, but plenty of conservatives as well, are coming to this decision that basically says that we should accept people like this in our society. No, I'm not saying every pedophile is violent. Pay close attention to that. Not every pedophile is particularly extremely violent. Some will use... All right. Some will use coercion. Some will try to convince and very easily manipulate and trick children into consenting to something that they have no comprehension of what it even is. Okay, they're consenting to it's pretty much like the Faustian deal, I guess you could say. You know, imagine you're me, right? You're 8 years old. You're 8 years old. You have no idea what any of that means. Alright? You don't even know what sex is. Okay? Whether it's supposed to feel bad or painful or good, whether it's supposed to be a reward or a punishment, you have no idea. None. No idea. Alright? But your sensations, your physical sensations, and your mental capacity, is not the same as an adult. Your mental comprehension at that age is not the same as an adult. Your physical sensations of determining pain or pleasure are the same the same as an adult, right? Okay, we all know that. We've observed plenty of children being curious about exploring themselves. We've even seen fetuses touch themselves in the womb. That does not mean that they would want an adult or even another child touching them in that way. Because now that's all kinds of different and scary and confusing, and the touch, the sensation of the touch, whether it's pleasurable or painful, is no longer in their control. Okay? So, to have somebody else doing it, as opposed to yourself, because you're in control, so, oh, I hit myself, I hurt myself, oh, I can stop, that hurts. It's far more less traumatic than if somebody else were to impose or coerce or convince you into it. And they will do many different things, like offer them candy or toys, or even threaten them with their life or their family's lives. And this becomes extremely scary for a child of that age, because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to react. They only respond positively or negatively or both to the interaction, based on the very little observance of human interactions that they've gone through at this point, depending on their age. And the younger it gets, the less interaction human interaction they've had, so they don't know what's normal or what to do in certain situations. And I feel it's important that we do not confuse pedophilia, which is a very, very hard mental illness that has been well documented, that it is the often the result of past and prior abuses or interactions. Now, people want to say, "Oh, the nonviolent isn't an abuse." It still has damaging psychological effects, whether they were particularly violent with the individual or not. Mine was particularly violent in nature. But I don't think that makes much of a difference when we're talking about children and protecting them. A child cannot comprehend what it means. They can only comprehend that the sensation, if a sensation feels good or bad. Okay? And that still is extremely confusing for them about why. And even we've had preschoolers playing with themselves and had to be told and set aside, "Oh, you can't do this at inappropriate times in certain circumstances." And generally this is because they are either being introduced to those sensations far too early, or they've experimented a little bit themselves, but they don't understand why it's inappropriate. And the reason they don't understand why it's inappropriate should indicate that they would not understand that this type of interaction going on with anybody else other than themselves would be inappropriate. Okay? They don't know. They have no idea that it's inappropriate. And shaming that behavior too harshly can also cause trauma. But that doesn't mean we should just be like, "Oh yeah, let's just invite them to touch each other and touch adults." Oh, I highly doubt that, because they do not comprehend what any of this means. They don't know that. All right? They can't possibly know that. You cannot possibly advocate such things simply out of physical curiosity that they don't understand. Okay? That sounds like, to me, that you are trying to find, you're trying to grasp at straws to justify this type of behavior towards children, which is inappropriate. For all those of you who are like, "Oh yes, we should definitely decriminalize it," whatever. No. It will always be a criminal act, because it'll always result in the psychological damaging effects that it has been well documented to cause on children. And the more we muddy these waters, trying to include it even in the LGBT community is not only toxic for the rest of society, it is toxic for the LGTB community. And don't get me wrong, I completely adore and support gay rights. and bisexual rights. Okay? I have nothing to say when it comes to shaming them. I have I have no shame, pretty much. Um, that is a completely different issue, um, in my eyes. And yeah, a pedophile can have any orientation. A pedophile can be straight, gay, bi, pan, trans, doesn't matter, right? Just like any gay, bi, straight, pan, trans, whatever individual cannot be a pedophile. But to include it as not, or to not classify it as criminal, or even go so far as to say they're not mentally ill or deranged, is a step too far in the wrong direction. That we should be running away from screaming. And there are people who I personally feel have either been very traumatized, abused, or coerced, or brainwashed into saying these things, into saying that it's okay, or saying that it should be normalized or condoned. No, not ever. Never is it acceptable for a grown man or a grown woman to have sexual relations with a child, whether that means actual intercourse, rape, coercion, consented or seemingly consented, because they can't really consent. Okay? If you would like to say that being under the influence of drugs or alcohol limits your mental capacity, I have news for you. It limits your mental capacity to being like in a childlike state when you're on drugs or on alcohol, correct? You're like a child again, right? Well, a child is at the same mental capacity as somebody drunk or on drugs. They can't comprehend much of what's going on around them, let alone properly consent or agree to anything that they're doing. And that is where this abuse in power is derived from. It's an abuse of power. People want to take what they want. Okay, so they prey on the weak and the feeble-minded so that they can manipulate this control dynamic, so that they can have what they want. It matters not to them what that person or who that individual is, what they look like. I'm not entirely certain it has anything to do with a sexual desire. It has more to do with I want to feel in control. And because I don't want to have to work for what I want, I will prey on the weak and the feeble-minded so that I can have what I want. And that is a disgusting predilection, to be sure. And yes, it is not in these very insane individuals' control. No, it's not something they chose, necessarily. But we are not helping them by completely shunning them or demonizing them, but we are not helping them by condoning the matter as well. So what do we do then? we can't completely shun them from society. We can't force them to live in exile or not have a way of making a living, but we can't condone their actions or normalize them or legalize them either. So what do? Well, it's an illness, correct? It's a mental illness. Is that what you're trying to tell us? Oh, we've been aware. Okay. What do we do with the mentally psychotic or infirmed? Well, we normally lock them in these comfortable cages, overly medicate them, right? Because we haven't figured out a cure yet. And so society looks at that as we're shunning them, or we're housing whatever. And then if they try to get back in to society's good graces, it takes a number of things. And some of them never even get that opportunity. They never get hired for even some of the most basic jobs that would never involve children. Okay? They're in and out of prison their entire lives, and poor and degraded. It's like slowly torturing them to death by cutting them off from everything. Well, what would be the more humane thing to do in this case? What I'm about to say is quite controversial, and I know many of you will disagree with it. Maybe we should be killing, euthanizing humanely pedophiles, expelling them completely and utterly from society as a whole, decimating them, exterminating them, I guess you could say, until we can find a cure. Neurologically speaking, what other recourse do we have? And I know you might say that sounds very draconian, or primitive, or harsh. Well, what about all of the victims and what we went through? Was that not harsh? Was that not violent? Was that not traumatic? And were they not the offended party in all of this? See, the problem I have with this so much is it's very much sounding like victim blaming. And a child has absolutely no control, no rights. No, you do what your parents tell you to do. No, you don't believe. You do what your parents tell you to believe. No, you don't get to learn what you want to learn. You learn what we teach you. And because they've never had any encounter with lies, the younger they are, they don't know what's true and what's not. They haven't been taught to discern the difference between truth and a lie, let alone discern good consenting sex that they actually want to engage in and not. They're not even very sexually developed, so the urge isn't even there for the most part. There's a tad slight bit of curiosity as they get older. They get a little bit older, and it varies. And depending on how fast one child develops over another is completely irrelevant. It doesn't make a difference. You don't put your hands on a child. You do not put your hands on a child. Not in any way. Not in any capacity. Other than to show minor compassion, a hug, a kiss, whatever. That's completely different. Pat on the back or a handshake, maybe. Once it goes beyond that, I don't think most people will hear me or what I'm trying to say. I would like to hope a lot of people will, um, and hopefully my message will be very well received by many of you. But sadly, I'm beginning to see an alarming number of these individuals. And it's not just the left, it's not just the right, it's both. And it's usually a minority of elites who want to continue to exercise their power and control over us and to do whatever they want with no ramifications for their actions, for no consequences, so that they can just continue to exercise whatever kind of power and control over us they want, whether that be sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, operant conditioning, brainwashing. It doesn't matter. Whatever suits and fulfills their need, whatever fulfills the consumer mentality, whatever forces people and pigeonholes them into the consumer system, whatever sells, right? Whatever brings them in the cash, I guess you could say. And yes, I'm referring to these very think they're so sly, slick Hollywood sex cultists, or wealthy political elite politicians, or the Catholic Church, the religious centers of power and control, whoever they might be, doesn't matter to me. If you prey on the weak, you prey on the young and are wicked with your power and only care about your profits, I have news for you. A war is coming, and we will tear down your idols and your false money and your wicked, vile ways of hurting others. A war is coming. Be ready, because we are. We see you. We see you.